Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. We have some very important news out of the state of New York where Republican U.S. Representative Elise Stefanik is reportedly set to run for New York governor. This has been a rumor for some times now, but today we get some very interesting insight for this move. The article begins by saying that Representative Elise Stefanik of New York is preparing to officially launch her campaign for New York governor, according to two sources familiar with her thinking. Quote, "It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when," said one of the sources, adding that Stefanik will announce at the time and place of her choosing. Speculation has been swirling for months over whether Stefanik, a close ally of President Trump, would seek the top executive office in the Empire State. Polling shows her leading a hypothetical Republican primary. A poll conducted by Gray House found that Stefanik had a commanding lead over fellow Representative Mike Lawler, a Republican of New York, who is considering a run, 44% to 7% among GOP voters. Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman secured 5% of the support in that poll with a margin of error of 5%. So Stefanik well has a large lead outside the margin of error in that poll. Last month, President Trump endorsed Lawler and Blakeman for re-election in their respective posts, raising speculation that he was seeking to clear the field for Stefanik in that race. Republicans say they have reason to be optimistic. In the Empire State, the party made gains in New York, which is considered a reliably blue state, in the last two elections. Trump lost the state by just more than 12 points last year, improving his 2020 margin of 23 points. Where Hochul, who stepped into the role as governor in 2021, defeated Republican Lee Zeldin by just about 6 points in 2022. However, the eventual Republican gubernatorial nominee will still face headwinds in New York, as the Cook Political Report rates the race as likely Democrat. And before I talk about this race, I do want to mention quickly, 2022 in this race could play actually a lot of very important significance. So in 2022, at the top of the ticket, the governor's race between Kathy Hochul and Lee Zeldin ended up being a lot closer than expected at only Democrat plus 6.4. Now, Democrat Kathy Hochul did end up winning this race. So you may say, well, okay, well, she won. What's the big deal? Like, does it matter if the race is close? And it's very important to note here that it actually does matter a lot. Because when you look at the House side of things in 2024, Democrats won 19 seats, Republicans won 7, with some very narrow wins for the Democrats in New York 4 with Gillen against a Republican incumbent D'Esposito, in New York 3 with the Democrat Susie, and New York 19 with the Democrat Riley. Let's go back to 2022, and remember, Kathy Hochul versus Lee Zeldin was only a 6-point race on the governor's side of things. Things were very close. Look at what happened in 2022. Very narrow Republican win in New York 22, but it was a win. New York 22 in 2024, the Democrat won by 9 points. New York 19 in 2022, the Republican Molinaro won by 1.6%. In 2024, the Democrat won by 2.2. In 2022, the Democrat Ryan in New York 18 only won by 1.3%. 2024, about a 14-point win. 2022, New York 17, Mike Lawler barely held on, 0.64%. 2022, he won by 6.3. But let's look at these two districts. New York 4, D'Esposito won by 3.6. 2024, it went blue by 2.3. And lastly, we have this district right here, New York 3 with George Santos at the time, 2022, it went Democrat by 3.6 in 2024. That House map, Republicans won 11 House seats in New York, Democrats won 15, in a state that overall voted 52.6% for the Democrats, Republicans 38.8%, whereas in 2024 it was 57.2 to 42.5. There's just enough Republican votes down ballot in 2022 to make this race competitive enough where the Republicans were able to pick up about another 3 seats from 2020 to 2022 with redistricting and the overall election environment, and Lee Zeldin doing so well at the top of the ticket, boosting Republican turnout. 2022 ended up being very big. What if that happens in 2026 is the argument I'm making here. Because the House control is going to be very important for 2026. And as we look at the state of New York, there are a lot of very close House races that are going to be up. The 17th District, the 19th District, the 22nd District, the 3rd District, the 4th District. These areas are going to be very competitive in 2026. And if the governor's race has a very competitive race between Kathy Hochul and between Elise Stefanik, that could again pay dividends as 2022 did for the Republicans, where it ended up being very close and probably gave the Republicans a few extra House seats. Now, a big caveat here is that this is not exactly the same as 2022. As 2022, Joe Biden was the Democratic president, and Republicans typically in that midterm was expected to do very, very well. The Republicans did well in some places, not well in some other places. New York was one of those places they did do very well, as midterms usually go. This time around, 2026, this should be a very good night for the Democrats, so it likely won't be as well for the Republicans as 2022, but that is still a significant thing to note. It's also worth noting, big issue with the Democrats here, Kathy Hochul's approval ratings over the last few months have not been very popular. So much so that her own Lieutenant Governor, Antonio Delgado, is running in the Democratic primary, attempting to win the Democratic nomination from her. So that's going to be something very interesting to watch for, as well as how Kathy Hochul does in the Democratic primary. On the Republican side of things, there are a lot of Republicans that could run, Elise Stefanik being the chief among them as the top Republican right now. Mike Lawler is often mentioned as a potential Republican candidate, as well as Betsy McCuff and John Castemetis and Bruce Blakeman as well. All of them are viewed as potential Republican candidates, though it does sound like Stefanik and Lawler are looking very seriously at this race. The early Republican primary polling has shown every poll that's had Stefanik in it, she is led by a pretty large margin. As for the general election, it is likely Democrat, according to Cook Politico and Sablo Crystal Ball. Inside Elections has it as a battleground. The early polling all have been from Republican-aligned pollsters, so you do have to take that into account when looking at the polls. 2 out of the 3 races showed this race outside the margin of error for Kathy Hochul over Elise Stefanik in this race, whereas one poll has it under the margin of error with a 1-point lead for Hochul over Stefanik. But in both of these races, or in this race, it's a lot of undecided votes still, 11% in one poll, 15 in another, 14 in another. And when you look at how New York is voted on percentages, and except for 2022, a lot of that vote usually goes more towards the Democrats than the Republicans when you look at the percentages. For the governor's race in 2022, for instance, we saw Lee Zeldin get up to 46.8%. That's the best a Republican has done statewide in New York in a very long time. Back in 2018, we saw Andrew Cuomo win. The Republican only got 36.16%. In 2024, Donald Trump did much better than he did in 2020. Trump got up to 43.3%. Harris got 55.9%. 2020, Trump only got 37.74%. So for 2026, if Stefanik in the polls is starting out around 39, 40%, 42%, that's actually very good for Republican standards in the state of New York. The question will be, can Stefanik do enough to get some of those undecided voters to her side and to vote for her, especially if Hochul's approval numbers are not going to be very popular in 2026? That's the big question to watch for going into this election. This is certainly going to get very interesting. When you look at the polls so far, 2 out of the 3 polls show Stefanik does perform better against Hochul than Mike Lawler does. The most recent poll from Harper Polling from early May shows Lawler's actually the stronger Republican candidate against Hochul, but either way, it is the state of New York. It's going to be probably pretty competitive, but it is going to be an uphill battle for the Republicans in this race. But again, if Stefanik makes this race competitive like it was in 2022, that could help the Republicans down ballot in the House races, which may even do more dividends than even winning the governor's seat. But for 2026, I do have this race starting out right now as likely Democrat. It's possible it does move down to lean Democrat towards November of 2026 if it gets more competitive, but right now, I think Hochul winning between 5% and 15% is how I would forecast this race at this time. What do you think of this video, though? Make sure to leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to hit like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in a future video.